Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of Divergent Dialogues. Today, we are really lucky to have a special guest, Gordon Smith. So, welcome, Gordon. Thank you for talking with us today.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. This is exciting.
I always feel like asking, how are you? Because we had this discussion beforehand about the awkwardness of how are you and how it's a bit interesting, as an experience to receive that question.
Yeah, the way that you just kind of laid out that statement, I wasn't sure if I was to add to the statement or whether there's a question in the statement.
It was like a double, like how are you question mark, and then am I meant to say something like retort to this question mark?
We're glad to have you.
That's all good. We're all good with that. Yeah, like Tina and I feel people that have been listening to our podcast for long enough know that we're complete like awkward dorks. So yeah, we're all for that. So yeah, I'm gonna read out the bio so I don't forget. Excellent. I actually had to Google how to pronounce some of these words, but I love that. I love it when I learn new words and how to pronounce. So I'm all for that. Awesome. So Gordon Smith is a licensed clinical mental health counselor, coach, creative, and work in progress at giftedandgrowing.org. A clinician in his 25th year practice, Gordon has centered his practice entirely on gifted adolescents and adults since 2017. Gordon's mission is to help gifted and otherwise neurodivergent people become fully themselves through self-knowing, self-acceptance, self-care, and self-advocacy. He offers individual counseling and coaching, as well as many varied group coaching and creative experiences. He is passionate about community building and the deep pathologization and decolonization of gifted consciousness. He is a gifted, multiply neurodivergent multi-potentialite living in Asheville, North Carolina, where he has been a community organizer in countless roles. In addition to his individual counseling and coaching services, Gordon leads groups centered in gifted self-development and creative consciousness. He is also a poet, organizer of the Big Asheville Science Salon, disc golfer, chess player, party planner, fellow at Camp Yanassa, traveler, and bon vivant. Did I get it right?
What is that?
From the definition.
The French is bon vivant, just like the liver of the good life.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
I
like that. Pardon?
I think you can resonate. Liver of the good.
Yes, yes, and I like the French. They have very gendered language, and I consider myself a flaneur. Yeah, flaneur, flaneur.
Yeah.
Yeah, people watching, observer of humanity and interaction.
With a particular kind of gait to the stroll. The flaneur like has this like backward lean as they move through the world observing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to a lurker who's just creepy. Yes, that's what I describe myself as. So maybe
yeah, flaneur. I have to remember which one's the female male version. Not that it really matters, but I like the different sound at the end. But yeah, it does. It sounds much more intentional and maybe even scientific as opposed to lurker or voyeur.
Right. There's no agenda other than to be in the world and observe it.
Yeah. And it's not something you can be charged with, like voyeurism. It's a criminal offense.
it is. I don't know if it is in the US, but it is. Anyway, we digress. Yes. Yeah, we had an excellent conversation before this. I really wish that we had recorded it, but that's okay. So we might kind of get these. We might have these. What's it called? These side jokes. In jokes. Back. Linking back to that. But yeah. So Gordon, like obviously working with gifted folks is like a big part of your work. You've been doing it for a really long time. And I'd be, I guess, really curious to know a little bit about what kind of brought you to that work. I think it's good for us to have a little bit of context if you're happy to share that.
Sure. Yeah, in 2016, I was going through a lot of different life changes. And as I was trying to figure things out, it seemed like a good idea to do an examination of my counseling practice. And so at the time I used to keep paper calendars. And so I pulled out like 7 years of paper calendars, and I got to flip through and read the names of the people that I'd seen. And I pulled out the names of the people I felt I'd done my best work with. And then I asked myself what they had in common. And at the time, I was like, oh, they're all very bright. I wonder if there's any literature on that. And subsequently fell into a re-examination rabbit hole of my own life as an identified gifted kid, and then former gifted kid, who didn't think of it again. And then immediately began moving toward mentors and education to help me center my practice there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think that's very common for a lot of gifted folks. Like I think there's some who are like myself who may not have been identified until later, but some it's like you're identified and then you kind of disconnect from a little bit or lose touch with it, and then later in life you're like, oh, like there's this part of my identity which was actually quite important, but for whatever reason it's kind of gone to the background or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, excellent. And part of a big part of your work, and I listened to your recent episode of Positive Disintegration podcast. So if any of our listeners are interested in learning more about positive disintegration and living as a gifted person, that's a great podcast. And you did speak a little bit about this there, but yeah, it's really interesting to know a little bit about like the importance of like mirroring for gifted individuals and a little bit about what that means, particularly as someone who has maybe like recently reconnected with that part of their identity or even like lately identified.
In my own process at the time, that there was a significant recognition that I had created mirror relationships. That is, I developed deep relationships with people with who I felt mirrored. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have that language, but I had the felt sense of it. And it wasn't until I got to university that I had that experience of feeling mirrored. And that place of going from not having those accurate mirrors to being in spaces where you felt secure in relationship, I was able to learn about myself through relationship rather than having to camouflage to try to preserve connection. That there was like a freedom to experiment and to experiment with expression of who I was, um, and to trust in the ability to repair the relationship if I stepped in it at any point. So at the time, I didn't know that. I was just like, oh, I have some really good friends who care about me. And fast forward to 2016 and beyond, of this lens of giftedness and neurodivergence, and that recognition that when we can feel understood in our depth and our complexity and our quirkitude, then we have this freedom to move toward authenticity, even if we have a nervous system that learned that that was unsafe, that we get to rewire our nervous system into recognizing that authenticity is where the safety lies. And that is a process that only through mirroring and community, I won't say only, I don't know that for sure, but my approach has been through mirroring and community to help people do that rewiring and recalibration.
Sorry, my cat has joined us, so people are watching on YouTube, but I don't know if you can hear the purring through the thing. So, but he's very sweet. But but I digress. Quirkitude. I'm stealing that one. I'm going to be using that one.
Yeah, I like that as well. And I like that mirroring, that whole concept of mirroring and kind of discovering yourself through that process with in safe friendships. And I often think about neurodivergent people, gifted people. We tend to like magnet to each other, just gravitate without even knowing. And I often say to people I work with, the reason why you think everybody is a little bit autistic or a little bit ADHD is because you're standing on a hill where you and your people have merged to, and the people around you are all autistic or ADHD. So yeah. And yeah, I think I think it is such a magical experience, whether you know it's happening or not, but just to find this place where you fit, and the things that didn't fit in other settings just are so natural. When you're with your people. Um, Caitlin and I, we tend to send each other voice messages as opposed to texting and phone calls and things like that, and it just it's a game changer for connection and communication, because when I'm forced to manage connections in a way that is about, regular phone calls or, texting back promptly or, within a reasonable time frame, that's too much for me to manage. So that connection is just going to fade away and fizzle out. But Caitlin and I just adapting and figuring out different ways to interact, and yeah, it changes things.
Yeah.
It does, and if there's a felt sense experience that happens, especially if you've had a lack, a scarcity, or an absence of those connections in the past, due to really early childhood masking and camouflaging, as an adaptive mechanism within your family of origin, that then prevents the development of these authentic relationships. Then upon entering, whether it be counseling or coaching or a group experience, to have this new felt sense experience of safety and authenticity, becomes a new kind of anchor state. So we come out of the cognitive, we come into that somatic sense of, oh, this is what that feels like. And now I've got something to orient toward that isn't purely an idea or an emotion. It's this, okay, that's that feeling. That's what people have been talking about.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts right now. I guess for myself, like I was the first person in my family to be like identified autistic ADHD, and I still felt there was this missing puzzle piece. But through that, a lot of my family either like identified or were diagnosed with some sort of combination of neurodivergence, and I kind of hope that that would help to I guess bridge and build some like a commonality or a point of understanding. But then when I found out that I was gifted, and no one else in my family has been identified as gifted, and I didn't have that experience of that mirroring growing up, even in kind of my friendship circles as well. So I just felt like a weirdo among weirdos. Like, I think looking back, like, there was probably like I did gravitate towards like autistic ADHD folks or people that are a little bit quirky. But yeah, like if you haven't had that mirroring, it's really challenging. And I think the last few years, as I've made these connections with people that have a maybe more of a similar neurotype to myself, like I think like I've learned a lot about myself through others, and often like I'll have these friendships where and we're learning together about ourselves. Like it's this like kind of back and forth, and like I'll uncover something. I'm like, oh hey, like here's this other thing like about like our neurodivergence or being gifted or whatever. And like, oh my gosh, yeah, me too. And it's so wholesome and lovely, because it's kind of like there's this little gifted kid in me being like, yeah, like it's really wholesome.
And I think when you have those experiences, well, for me anyway, like it gives me the confidence to not be liked. That RSD component of ADHD and the people pleaser in me has always sort of sought that reassurance and approval from others, because that's what it is to be a good girl or a good woman. you're likable, and that's something we all strive for. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't go around just, you know, being an asshole, but if people don't like me, or, you know, I no longer feel the need to change who I am, because I am polite and I am kind and I am, well, I think I'm fairly nice. Anyway, my self-appraisal. Yeah, I'm cool. Find myself quite funny. But I no longer feel the need to adapt who I am to get that approval, or to, you know, get that acceptance into the group. It's like, well, it's okay. This isn't my space. I have a space, and I'm seen, I'm understood. And yeah, people laugh at my jokes. So that's my space. I don't need to find a different way to fit into this other space.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gordon, I guess, does that kind of mirror your experience working with gifted youth and adults? Like, or I guess
It does, and those layers of discovery that you're talking about, we discover how we have adapted and contorted ourselves in order to seek acceptance and avoid rejection. And, you know, let's give it up for evolutionary biology. Well done, evolution, for helping us to develop a brainstem and a cerebellum that help us preserve cohesive social networks and that make us feel like we're going to die if someone rejected us. So once we kind of recognize that those mechanisms are at work and can see them when they activate, and can help our bodies to come into, you know, explain to our bodies that it's safe, and then to be able to come into these places of experimentation where I'm not being rejected. I am in a place of difference. But the mushroom does not have an oak tree deficit disorder because it's a mushroom. It's just a mushroom. Even if it's in a room full of oak trees who say you clearly have a problem. And so once you have this deeper knowing of self, then it's not a rejection. It's like a fundamental, there's a capacity issue around it. Like, oh, is there a desire to be understood? Does the other person desire to understand? No? Great. You know, have a great life. Oh, there is a desire. Do I care to do the labor around that? Yes. Super. Here we go. But we've come out of that, all of those safety mechanisms into a place of discernment. And like you were saying, Tina, of like, oh yeah, I know what's in here. Would you like to know? And can we discover each other right now? Because I don't know what's going on in there either.
yeah, I think it really comes down to curiosity, really. And, you know, I think that sorry, my cat is being like so cuddly, which is so cute, but really not convenient right now. But it's, oh gosh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, it's, oh gosh, I really, oh, thanks, Kai Kai. I felt I was on the cusp of something great there, and now I've lost.
Curiosity. You said curiosity.
Oh, yes, curiosity. Thank you.
The cat killed your curiosity.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. The cat, that is really, yeah.
That is funny.
That is. Anyways, I was gonna cut that out. I'm gonna keep that in now. So yes, curiosity. So in my experience, I mean, yeah, like as you said, Gordon, like there are some people who perhaps, and you know, and there are some people that maybe I click with a little bit more, gravitate a little bit more to. And you know, sometimes there is an element of yeah, trying to kind of bridge this understanding and connection, like, you know, especially when we're talking about like that double empathy problem where, you know, two people of different neurotypes. And like that's not just like like a neurodivergent person and a neurotypical person, even amongst neurodivergent folks, like, you know, we're all different. We have different combinations of neurotypes and ways of expressing ourselves and whatever. But I agree. Like, I think that the key is being curious, and we can kind of assess and go, oh, is this connection for me? Is it not? And like, it's not that like I'm a horrible person or they're a horrible person or anything. It's just like, it, you know, it's, we're not clicking. It's not vibing or whatever. And I think sometimes the challenge particularly when you're of a neurotype that is quite different to the neuronorm, or quite a rare unusual, what was it, quirkitude, rare gem world.
Yeah.
There can be this woundedness, relational woundedness, that you're kind of walking around with. And if you're going into every situation expecting this mirrored experience, then you can be feeling like quite upset when that doesn't occur. But for me, it's like, well, if you're holding that curiosity, like, you may be able to find some point of commonality or connection, or whatever that is. In saying that, having my gifted community, neurodivergent community to go back to, my little island party, that's awesome. And that gives me that kind of, that safety and that security there. So, yeah.
And you bring up the experience that a lot of people listening may be amidst right now, of being in that place where so much internalized shame and difference is present, and that the lack of safety that folks have experienced, especially for gifted people who tend to have fairly high conscientiousness, systems awareness, problem solving capabilities, so much of that problem, if they're told they're the problem enough, is about what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me. Repeat that thousands of times. And it leaves people it can really shatter folks. And doing that reassembly work is a patient process that requires a lot of compassion and curiosity. When we're not in safety, then we're not going to be curious. We're really just trying to make it. We're really just trying to make it. And when there's a safety component available, then we have the luxury to be curious and to permit that kind of compassionate inquiry into our own experience.
Yeah. When you were saying that, the list of I was like, tick, 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 like conscientiousness, systems thinking, problem solving. And it's interesting you talk about the conscientiousness, because I did the the Big Five personality questionnaire, and my conscientiousness score was in the 99th percentile, or something ridiculous. And I thought that was a good thing, and it is. I'm not saying it isn't, but particularly in this context, when you're really self-conscious, not self-conscious. Well, that's the thing, is it? I think that conscientiousness can turn into self-consciousness. I think that was a great split there.
Especially when it merges with a perfectionism born of shame.
What are you talking about, Gordon? I have no idea. What?
Well, I think also as well, when you were talking about that, Gordon, because we have all these messages that come to us because of these parts of ourselves, that systems thinking, that conscientiousness, all of those things. And quite often, my experience has been that, oh, just go with the flow. You need to chill, and which equals you're not a fun person to be around. But then, when you do find your space, there's all of a sudden you are the fun person, because you like Caitlin and I can sit and talk about systems and all sorts of nerdy, boring things that keep everything, flowing nicely. And it's that reframe of in one space, you are this uptight, not fun person, but in another space, having that awareness and being able to, just live your life that way, that is going with the flow, that, you are a fun person. And there's lots of really cool memes and about, Caitlin's love of Excel spreadsheets that we laugh about. And I think that's really joyful.
Are you a real freak in the sheets, Caitlin?
Sorry?
Are you a real freak in the sheets?
You'd have to ask my wife. Anyway. Moving along. So I really love the direction this conversation has taken. But
Caitlin knows all the good Excel formulas.
oh, not all. Like there are certainly people that are far better at Excel than I am. Like I'm like beginner to like intermediate, like honestly. I think Tina's like just always like amazed by all these things. I'm like, yeah, there's people that are way bigger nerds for this stuff than I am.
Yeah, and before we get too far along, Tina, that the what allows for play or fun, the precursors to that are safety and trust. That when safety and trust are present, then play is available. And in the absence of those, it's not available. Am I safe? Can I trust you?
Yeah.
If so, let's hang out. If not, I'm gonna be uptight for a minute.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're on guard, and you yeah, very, very guarded, because often when we are being playful, we are not necessarily being socially aware and appropriate, and all of those things. We are unguarded. And I I can't be playful if if I don't trust that the people I'm with are going to be understanding if I do sort of say something really weird, because it's probably going to happen.
That's interesting because I think I have a tendency to lead with playfulness. And I think it's like it can either go really well or really bad. But for me, it's I guess like I'm the kind of person that I really enjoy that energy and people that can have a bit of a laugh and all that kind of thing. So I think when, obviously it depends on the context. Like, if I'm at a funeral, I'm not going to be going around making jokes or something like that. But I think for me, it's kind of like a little bit of like a litmus test for me to go, oh, like, is this the kind of person that I'm going to kind of vibe with? If it kind of like they're just like not into it, I'm like, okay, cool, like nice for chatting, like go to the next person. So but yeah.
And you're talking about a really powerful adaptation there, which is a presumption of safety and trust. I'm going to presume on the positive and act as though. And when I bump up against a place where it turns out that isn't true, well, there we are. I will trust in my ability to either repair that or to escape that.
Yeah.
In the moment.
Yes, escape.
Yeah. Humor is definitely one of my sort of defense mechanisms, protective things. And I think I quite in new situations, I often rely on my ADHD verbal impulsivity just to say things that thankfully people often laugh at. But it is that is more that sort of in the moment type humor, as opposed to the who I really am and the things that I really think and want to say. In those social situations, because I'm the same, like I want to know that the people I'm around are sort of in that same space, and you can sort of have a laugh with. But yeah, it is usually verbal impulsivity, and not not necessarily the bits that stay hidden.
Yeah, I think part of it is like embracing the quirkitude. I'm going to use that from now because I think people would laugh at me because I was unusual, and then I was like, okay, like I can use this to my advantage. I'm going to like lean into this, this strategy or this whatever.
And once you've got the sense of being self-possessed and having a self-concept that's filled out, that is broad enough to really encompass all of who you are, then that becomes available, Caitlin. That sounds like living.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I'm getting some like huge validation here. Called out for my perfectionism, but also like huge validation for my recovery from, hopefully. They, so I guess like, we've talked a lot about, kind of like some of our experiences, but I'm really interested, Gordon, like, are these like similar to your experience working with like gifted, youth and adults, or maybe there's other ways that these sorts of things show up for them.
Mhm. So yes is the short answer. Absolutely. And people come in having received, various levels of acceptance or rejection, health of relationships, types and number of traumas, their own gifted trauma, were they supported, not supported, so the variables are variable. And for people who come in to be able to be in a relationship where they feel validated and challenged, allows for a safety of exploration, as well as like a softness toward those places in ourselves that are still really difficult for us sometimes. Um, Even if we see them and accept them, they remain difficulties. And so for people to be able to come into this situation, recognizing that they're weird, um, and to have that weird change from the way we use it today, which means abnormal and possibly unacceptable, to the like or the origin of the word, which was WYRD, which simply meant fated or destined. That it's like gifted, it's like this word, this is who you are. So yeah, you're weird in that 14th century sense as well as in this 21st century sense.
Yeah. I remember one time with a therapist, this was years and years and years ago, and I was talking about, and this was before I knew I was gifted. I knew I was autistic ADHD. And we're having this conversation about, I'm just like, I'm weird. And the therapist was like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "No, I definitely am." And I wasn't saying it as a bad thing. I was like objectively, I'm weird. Like I
I
am.
am an I am an outlier. I'm a list to the bell curve in a number of ways. This is simply
Yeah. So it was actually being told I wasn't weird was like invalidating to my experience at
yeah,
the time.
absolutely. And I appreciate that y'all use the terms, you identify as autistic and identify as an ADHDer. And these are wonderful shorthands. And they oftentimes help people to open their minds to how they're going to experience you.
Yeah.
Um, and then other times can close minds, right? Like, oh, I've got an autistic nephew. I know exactly how you are. That's they. Um, and 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 so those medical model frameworks can be super helpful. Um, and then also to be able, when I'm working with people, to come at things from a neurodiversity paradigm model of I possess traits and characteristics and experiences that are unique to who I am. I uh, I am part of the broad ecology of humanity and living things on this planet. And I can describe to you some of my traits and characteristics that you may notice. Um, and yeah, if that's interesting to you. So here's another, once we develop self-knowledge, whereas autism and ADHD are really helpful shorthands in some ways, um, we don't forget that they end with disorder, and that they are about difference being deficit, and they are about some neuromajority, neuronormative, perfectionistic Western model that is judging you as being incorrect in some way.
Mm.
Um, so it's helpful, and that's inside of it. On the other side of this neurodiversity paradigm, where we can come at it from this ecological model, but we lose the shorthand. So socially, it gets trickier. So this idea of being able to dwell in this place of using our systems awarenesses to be able to see ourselves in this ecological framework, as well as being able to switch over to this more deficit-based hierarchical um, framework, is really helpful. It's like becoming bicultural in the way one sees oneself.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Gordon. This is actually really interesting because Tina and I, our PhD is very much kind of in that space of we're doing separate PhDs but similar-ish topics, very much sitting in that space between that pathology paradigm and the neurodiversity paradigm, and as clinicians and lived experience, like having lived experience and trying to navigate that and how that works, and it is really challenging, because I think that there can be this whole talk about, oh, you have to be like affirming and all this kind of thing. And it's like, well, yes, 100%. But I work in these systems that require me to speak this pathologized language. And, yes, like, there's these opportunities for subsidies, but I have to write reports saying you have this problem, and this problem in order for you to continue to receive that support. So, like, I honestly, like, I don't think that there's enough discussion around like sitting in this liminal space of like, I want to do the best thing for the people I work with, but also like I'm limited in how I can do that. And that's like, I don't have control or power over that myself, just as much as my clients don't have power and control over that. So yeah, that's a really, so what was it? It was like bicultural, is that what you said? Like this?
Yeah.
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 Way to put it, I think. Yeah.
It's because it is a something that I'm sort of pondering at the moment, the tension between the medical model and that the neurodiversity sort of affirming model, because it's you're right, all of those, all the shorthands do have disorder at the end. And I often talk about how in society, it's good business that society is geared towards the majority, which is the neurotypical sort of neurotype, and because that's it's set up for the neurotypical people and to be productive and all that sort of stuff. And from a business perspective, it makes sense. I get it. But you've being in the minority, it's like, okay, well, I've got to figure this out. So I like that those shorthands do have some of that deficit-based language in it, because it really recognizes that the way my brain is set up and the way I interact with the world does not fit the majority. And it is, it does kind of give a nice way to simply explain that I'm at a disadvantage because of the way my brain is and the way my nervous system is and the way the world is set up. And yeah, I like that, because it is tough at times, and it is, like sometimes I do feel a little bit alien in the world. But at the same time, I like that there's this whole other space where it's not about deficits, it's not about disorders. It's just that, yeah, if the world was organized differently, then it wouldn't be me with those disordered names and deficits. It would be the neurotypical population that would have those shorthand labels. But yeah, from a business sense, I get it. It's never going to switch, because that's bad business. And to be completely honest, I don't really want the world to switch, because if it did, then it's on us as the minority, the neurodivergent group, to kind of keep things moving while the neurotypical people grapple with disability and disorders in the world that's set up for us. So, I don't want to look after all of them. And there's just too many of them.
Oh, that's so funny. I was thinking though, like I think in Australia, like there is a lot of talk about neurodiversity in regards to like autism and ADHD, and like it's definitely like people are getting a little bit more of an understanding around that neurodivergent umbrella of, it's not just about autism and ADHD. Obviously, we focus a lot on that in our podcast because that's kind of our frame of reference.
Yep.
But giftedness isn't spoken about as much in that discourse. And yeah, I'm just like a little bit curious around how, like in your experience, giftedness kind of fits in this like neurodiversity paradigm. And because I think like the history of giftedness, I think people go, oh well, it's really smart people and, it's really easy for them and all this kind of thing. But there's been a lot of challenge as well in that space.
Yeah, and there's 100 ways to talk about that, Caitlin. And
Sorry, I'm like, here's a big question.
well, and so this kind of brings us to pathologization, depathologization. And yes, I've gotten a lot of practice saying that word. It's like it's a tricky one. It's a mouthful. Um, but recognizing that that pathology paradigm, that medical model, has a lot to do with conformity. It has a lot to do with efficiency. Yes, it's more efficient to build systems that serve 95% of the population. And if you can build a system that adequately serves 95% of the population, like that's a solid system. Like, well done. That is hard to do. Um, and so I recognize the value in that. And then when you're standing outside those systems, watching them function for others, there's a sense of, well, how do I get my needs met? And this is where being able to toggle over into this ecological framework can be really helpful, rather than how do I become uh, someone who will be served by this system? How do I conform my consciousness? It becomes, okay, what are the adaptations I'm going to need? What are the communities I'm going to build to, within this ecological framework, be this orchid, rather than one of these vines. Um, and this is where we get to this depathologization and neurodiversity being, about cooperation, about finding people and mm, creating immediate experiences. That is, I'm with someone, we're creating something together, I'm tending my life today. And within where the systems can be helpful, super. And where they can't be able to build out our own communities of care, to supplement.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And subvert.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I guess someone like myself who is a bit I'm quite introverted, and going out into the world, into, like everyone talks about community and all this kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, community, oh, that sounds kind of scary. But I think like the last few years I've really um purposefully tried to find my way, to find my own little community, and it's paid dividends. It's really so important to have that kind of safety net. But it's really hard. Like, it's like, like I remember when I was first identified gifted, and I was like trying to go in, because like there's not a lot of gifted community here in Australia, at least that I'm aware of. And so a lot of it is like US based, and like maybe like some in Europe and all this kind of thing. So I'm like, the lurker that I am, I'm like going online and like doing these communities and like trying to suss things out and figure it all out. But it can be quite challenging, especially when you're not used to being part of these sorts of communities. Like, you're used to being like the lone wolf, going through life, and maybe every once in a while you'll encounter a gem such as Tina, who, like, like you build these friendships with. But like, for me growing up, I had a lot of these sort of, very typical autistic, like, having these one-on-one relationships with people. But to be part of a community, that was something that I had to learn as an adult. And yeah. So,
Yeah, that's part of the reason I run these groups. Like, this gifted adults group experience tends to be for people who haven't done a lot of exploration, who are kind of coming into it and doing that early reassessment, and to be in a room designed for that. Um, and just because we're all gifted doesn't mean we're all like each other. However, we can be in common cause and common exploration together, and see what relationships develop as a result.
yes, yes. So yeah, I'm really curious. I've actually been part of one of Gordon's groups before, Magnum Opus. And yeah, like, I'd love if you could share with our listeners a little bit about some of these groups that you run, because they're really really creative and freeing, and I think really special. Like, I don't know anything else like that out there. So
Same. That's why I'm doing it. Yeah, the gifted adult group experience that I was just talking about, um, it's normally about like 8 to 10 people meet weekly for 6 weeks is the event. And the initial session, I like send around a document with a bunch of links and like common language and like articles and videos and stuff that people can utilize, reflection questions. And then we all come together and I kind of create this safe culture and container, and watch people begin to like do the testing of the social to see, okay, is this place going to be okay? From the themes that emerge in that first session, I'll then create the second session document with more readings and more articles, but based entirely on what came up within the group. So we have this community cohesion and thematic cohesion that is iterative. And over the course of 6 weeks, the group has steered the group rather than me applying some template. And so it is about everyone's needs being met in ways that haven't happened before, and an allowance for self-exploration in community. It's all like challenge by choice. You never have to like jump in and like bare your soul, but um, it creates conditions for novel, healthy relationships to form alongside this identity formation around giftedness.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's like the epitome of like co-created participatory spaces for gifted folks.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I can speak for myself as a PDAer, having choice and control in my social spaces, I really appreciate. And I think it's like, you're really feeling a part of creating that process. So yeah, I think that's really like a really special thing that you've created there.
So in addition to that, which is kind of a straightforward group coaching co-created process, I also run these other types of groups that center the creative aspects of consciousness. Gifted people get boxed into the intellectual. Therapy tends to center on the emotional and somatic. And this creative or imaginational dimension of experience is rarely centered. And in my life, it's been a very important space for expression and self-understanding, to write poetry, to do improv, to write prose, to be in creative spaces. And so we finished one up recently. That was all around poetry. It was 8 weeks. People got together. We provided various prompts, but it wasn't about coming up with a good idea. It wasn't about even expressing your feelings in a conscious way. It was about allowing for the free flow of the ink and to keep your pen moving and to evade the perfectionistic tendencies, to sideline analytical mind, to allow for this creative impulse that when you tap into it, we call it the little hop because it's not that far from where we are. It's just like this little tiny geek of attention, this allowing things to come forth, knowing that they won't be judged. We create these critique-free environments, where you certainly don't have to share anything, but were you to share anything afterward, it's going to be welcomed. And it creates this freedom of expression that allows for a type of self-reflection and a utilization of an associative reasoning network that we possess that we don't get to use very often because the systems we have in place are value the linear and the commodifiable, and less about this kind of raw experience. And so these whole new parts of people show up, and it allows for unconscious and subconscious material to rise to the top, and new themes emerge, and new ways of seeing our experience emerge. And there's surprises. I'm curious about like your take on the magnum opus, which is a single session event of the same idea.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Because yeah, I think as a hopefully formally reformed perfectionist, like I think it can be quite confronting because I guess the way it's set up is you're kind of producing this written work based on like a theme and a few instructions like in quite quick succession. But that's that's the point of the process. And it was really interesting because by the end I was speaking, not speaking, I was writing obviously, but it was like from this childlike space. I was like telling stories from this perspective of this child, and it was quite interesting because one of my friends joined the same group, and so afterwards we were kind of debriefing a little bit. I'm like, what the heck? Like, I'm like, where did this come from? But yeah, I guess yeah, like when you're kind of sitting in that subconscious space, you never, yeah, you never know what's going to come up. And like if I mean I kind of work from like an IFS informed sort of lens. I haven't done the training yet because it's really hard to get into. But it makes sense to me that we have all these little parts of ourselves, and I guess one of my little childlike parts was like, hey. I wanna say something today. Yeah, so it was yeah, I guess I was surprised. I was very surprised by what came up. But it was really lovely. It was a really lovely experience which felt really supported and just interesting. It was just so different to what I was used to. Like it was just I'm like, "Oh, this is yeah, like I want to give it a go." So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was yeah, very clearly memorable. Like I think about it with fondness.
The email that you sent, Caitlin, one of the questions that you posed was in times that are really uncertain, where there's a lot of calamities and unrest and terrible things happening left and right, how to find focus, find grounding. This was one of the questions you had. And Tina, I appreciate you bringing up what you just brought up because it speaks to it, right? I mean, here you are sitting here taking in this information, participating in this conversation while this other event that you care deeply about is happening in the background.
Yeah.
And so, I think that one way people think about this is like compartmentalization, which I get that. I also think it's a way to like repress. A lot of times, like, let me stick that and put it away and not think about it again. But that doesn't work because it's in our consciousness already. It's like shoving a tuna sandwich under the front seat of your car because you want to get rid of it. Like but you're gonna know it's there.
Yeah.
We're getting away from the tuna snake. And uh, instead, the approach that I've been taking is like it's about how we learn to expand our capacity to hold it all. How do how do I entrain my nervous system to be present in this time of orchestrated overwhelm? That's the challenge that's in front of all of us right now. And it's a daily choice and practice to be able to do so. And some days to recognize I'm going to have to check out a little further. I don't have the bandwidth today. And other days to be a lot more engaged and recognizing that capacity is expanding and to step into it.
Yeah, I think something that I've been learning this year, I've been learning lots of things this year, but I feel like I just constantly learn. It's just my way of being in the world. I'm a very curious person. And so I guess learning to discern what I need to let move through me or like what I actually need to address. Because there's like especially as a person who's like very sensory sensitive, like you're talking about OEs, like I'm like high on like every single OE. If people are like, what the heck's an OE? We have I think it's episode 25. We talk about positive disintegration, overexcitabilities and all that. So yeah, probably don't have time to give you the overview now, but you can go listen to that. But yeah, so but Gordon knows what I'm talking about, so that's the main point. And Tina does because she was there for the episode. So yeah, like living, being in this world with, like what is it? Intellectual, emotional, sensual, psychomotor. What's the other one?
Creative imagination.
Imagination. Yeah, like when you live in a body that is very complex, very intense. Your experience, your inner experience, and all the information that you receive from the world, your outer, is perceived and interpreted in this really complex, intense way. Like it can feel like, oh my gosh, like I've got so many things that I need to constantly address and pay attention to and all this kind of thing. But for me, because I receive so much data on a daily basis, like I really do have to kind of discern and go, okay, this is something I can deal with. This isn't for me. This is something I need to let move through me. Like I don't want to not address it at all because, like I need to.
It's our choice. That's such a high level of attention and awareness that you're describing of like, okay, I can't grab a hold of these. My hands are full right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being really learning how to recognize what they are. So, for like mindfulness. So learning how to actually acknowledge and recognize all of them. So you then have more like control and intention when you are choosing what to grab onto and what to let go. Because any day, or even each hour of each day, how many things you can hold on to will vary. And being able to really choose where you put your attention and energy, it is a real skill to learn, but also being able to let go of some of the guilt or shame even for the things you've chosen not to hold on to in the moment. Because that's a tough one when we are making choices because it's what we think we're meant to be doing, to please others or to fit those descriptors under the role of mother, friend, wife, husband, employee, whatever it might be. We're trying to be good at those things, so we hold on to particular things, but sometimes we have to let go of them as well.
Yeah, there's a perfectionism implicit in what you're describing there, Tina, of like that ethical perfectionism or some other perfectionism of like, it's somehow wrong of me not to engage and attend to this. And that perfectionistic impulse is an abandonment of self in those moments. Like, oh, I genuinely do not have the bandwidth. Like I'll be a mess for 3 days if I don't like take this step and like get my nervous system in order so I can attend in an ongoing way. So yeah, being able to kind of come out of that perfectionistic ideal into what's true for you right now.
I just had like a massive penny drop right then. So sorry, my cat. I love my cat, but he's being very distracting. I think I've struggled with like existential perfectionism. Like the penny just dropped then. I'm like, oh my God. Because I was thinking, like, I think, they're like, I mean, I'm a social worker. So, obviously as a social worker, we're, about social justice and, we want to kind of, look at these systems, like we want to make change and all this sort of thing. But I mean, we're especially looking in the world that we live in right now. There's, we could go in a million different ways. There's so much going on, and I think, like when I was younger, I would very much feel like I had a responsibility to do something about these things. But obviously I'm one person and I only have so much capacity to be able to do things. And this existential perfectionism where like I felt, this is probably in the context of growing up in like a religious household as well. So I think from a very young age, I was aware of these things, but also gifted. So like my level of awareness was like, but so yeah, I think, I guess what I was trying to say around that is that, I would have a very real somatic and emotional response to a lot of these things that were going on around the world, and like just being in a state of survival, like not just from my own experience of growing up and being in the world, but also just like all this stuff all the time. And it's not a sustainable way to live. And I think, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, I need enough for me. I need enough for my family, my friends, and obviously my clients. And if I've got a bit extra for other things, awesome. But like, I can't be just giving out all of this energy and worry and even empathy to all, like, every single thing. I just don't have the capacity for that as much as I'd love to. Maybe one day, when I'm like rich and have all of my basic needs met in a really easy way and I have all this time to do all these things, great. But but in this day and age, a lot of us don't. We're working, things are expensive. There's lots of things.
That impulse to help and to perceive the inequities in the system and to see the pain that it causes and that desire to help is obviously a really beautiful, conscientious, loving part of you. Not to mention like that kind of, well, I won't go into all the feelings around it. And it brings us like full circle back to community, because if we know that we are ensconced in communities of people with similar impulse who have their own varying bandwidth from day to day and moment to moment, that we can trust that it's okay for us to rest today because Jerry's like all over it right now. And when I'm feeling good, then I can go, give Samantha a break over here, and we get to do this together.
Yes. Yep. And that, I agree, it's so important. And that's, I think, something that has helped as well, as building that community and knowing that, like, I'm not the only person out there trying to, fight the good fight when it comes to, decolonizing, depathologizing, therapy or support, for, neurodivergent folks, whatever combination that looks like. And, we don't have to take it all on. And it's not realistic for us to expect ourselves or anyone to be able to do it all by themselves as well. So I think it's a good full circle. And thanks for that. My brain was just like, ding, oh, like, when that hasn't can get existential. Oh, there you go. It's like a whole new level unlocked. Yeah. I'll be talking about a few of my friends about this as well. I'm like, oh, there we go. That's what it is. Anyway. But
Can I share my metaphor for perfectionism before we go?
yes, please.
Go.
It's been a theme, so
I think of perfectionism like the North Star. If you're out on a boat, you need to figure out where you're going and you know where the North Star is, then you can kind of navigate by it. But if you think you're going to sail to the North Star, then you're delusional. That we have these ideals that we use to navigate and to orient by, and we move in the direction dictated by those things, but we don't expect to arrive. That's been a really helpful frame.
yeah. But when you're an ADHD, you expect to arrive and you expect to have arrived yesterday.
Center, I think I'll take any star. Why haven't I landed on any of the stars?
I'll take all the stars. Yes.
I can't land on one.
So anyone who would be interested in getting to know Gordon and his work a little bit more, we will have all of his details to his website and groups and everything in the show notes. It was so lovely to have you on this episode, Gordon. And I think we'll probably be having another episode at some point about talking about other things. I really appreciate your time today, and I'm super excited to get this episode out. I'm sure other people will get a lot from this episode as well.